Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. Now, this afternoon, we are going to look at the fact that Trump and his administration, that's the Trump administration, desires to hunt down students who are, uh, you know, anti-Israel protesters, right? Anti what Israel is doing protesters. So let me be very careful about that. Not that the students are anti-Israel, all right, or the state of Israel, that they're anti what Israel is doing, particularly in the Gaza area. But the United States is suggesting under the Trump administration that students, that's foreign students who go to the United States to study on a student visa, their visas can be revoked, can be canceled, and they will be deported, not can, but they will be deported if they participate in any anti-Israel protest action, right? If they are deemed to be anti-Semites, right? Their visas can be canceled, revoked, and they will be deported. Now, what is very frightening about this executive order is that it also involves or includes people who might have protested in the past. So the university is going to disclose to the Trump administration anyone whose name was a part of any protest actions during the protest actions that were on campus sometimes last year. So he's not suggesting that it's a future activity, it's anyone who might have participated in the past. Their visas will be revoked and canceled, and the students will be deported forthwith to their country. Now, that is something that is unprecedented in America's history. It means, therefore, the whole matter of freedom of choice, or freedom of speech, rather, is being eroded in the United States right as we speak. Now, freedom of speech is one of the most treasured values of the United States. Apart from freedom of religion, it is at the helm. Well, freedom of religion is what has granted us freedom of speech and freedom of the Protestant religion, not the Catholic religion, not any other religions like the Muslim religion or the Hindu religion, is the freedom of the Protestant revolution or Christianity, that brand of Christianity that started in Europe. Well, it started first in biblical times under the Jews, right? The first time you had Christians, but it was promulgated and disseminated to all parts of the world during the Protestant Reformation of Europe. We must understand that. We have to go back into reading about the Protestant history and the Protestant Reformation, because those are the values on which the United States was founded. But it seems now to be renouncing, as it were. The United States is now renouncing all the values that it embraced when it first came into power, when it fled from Europe and sought freedom of religion, in which, the nation would not have a king nor a pope. So a church without a pope and a nation without a king. That is what the United States, pronounced when the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were written and ratified. That was the plan. However, in recent times, we're seeing that the nation seems to want a king. And Trump and Biden and Obama, the Barack Hussein Obamas, and all of these presidents in recent times have declared and have behaved as if they are king. And the executive orders that they're actually pronouncing are decrees as if they were coming from an earthly king. And we have to understand that these decrees, even though constitutionally all presidents of the United States have a right to issue executive orders, but we're seeing a gross exploitation at the moment, a flagrant exploitation of these executive orders. And the fact that each successive president comes in, they can undo or they can expand upon the executive orders pronounced by their predecessor, something that is very interesting. But let us look at the papers here. We have from Reuters, coming from Reuters. We have here that Trump administration to cancel student visas of pro-Palestinian protesters. And that's something interesting. US President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday to combat anti-Semitism and pledged to support non-citizen college students and others who took part in pro-Palestinian protests. So it's not who will take part or who are going to take part in pro-Palestinian protests. Those two will be included, but those who even took part, those who even dared, even though Trump was not in power at the time, but he's going to include them, those who took part. A fact sheet on the order premises immediate action by the Justice Department to prosecute terroristic threats, arson, vandalism, and violence against American Jews. And of course, on this channel, we are not supporting or endorsing any sort of action against Jews, violent action against Jews, or against anybody, as a matter of fact. All right, we do not endorse that sort of behavior, but we understand that it is the right of each citizen to speak out against any form of injustice that they see, okay, and that they experience, and marshal all federal resources to combat what is called the explosion of anti-Semitism on our campuses and streets since October 7, 2023, attack on Israel by Palestinian Islamist group Hamas. So it means, therefore, that the United States is going to go after all those students and people also, US citizens, who have participated or who participated in the anti-Israel protests, the pro-Palestinian protests actions that occurred on lots of college campuses across the US sometime. Was it in recent times? Was it last year? I think it might have been sometime last year or the year before. Now, rights groups and legal scholars said the new measure would violate constitutional free speech rights and would likely draw legal challenges. But the president is going on as planned. Now, remember now that Trump is not the author of these executive orders a lot of times, right? He has advisors and people who are wielding power in his office, in his administration. The First Amendment to the Constitution protects everyone in the United States, including foreign students studying at American universities, said Carrie DeSalle, senior staff attorney at the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University. Deporting non-citizens on the basis of their political speech would be unconstitutional. But right now we are seeing where the United States is moving beyond the Constitution, where it is renouncing all the principles. It is shredding the principles outlined in the Constitution. And there seems to be nothing that we can do or the citizens can do about it, right? And that is something that we have to come to grips with. Now, the NPR is suggesting the same thing. They're all reporting the same thing. The New York Times, the NPR, the Washington Post, right? So what NPR says, Trump order cracks down on anti-Semitism and could deport foreign student protesters. Well, this one is a little bit more, I should say, softer in their use of language, right? They're using more, they're more euphemistic. The other one says that they will be deported. This one is saying they could be deported. Now, an executive order signed Wednesday by President Trump outlines a broad federal crackdown on the explosion of anti-Semitism in the US, especially on college campuses, and says he will cancel, well, Trump is suggesting that, he will cancel visas of foreign students who are Hamas sympathizers and deport pro-jihadist protesters. So what Trump is doing and his administration, they are conflating anti or pro-Palestinian protests with Hamas sympathizers, right? So he's saying that if you are protesting against what is happening in Palestine, it means therefore that you are a Hamas sympathizer. We put you on notice. Come 2025, we will find you and will deport you. Read a White House fact sheet about the order posted online Thursday. So he says that he will find you and he will deport you. The order cites an unprecedented wave of vile anti-Semitic discrimination, vandalism, and violence, and states that U.S. policy shall be rather to use all available and appropriate legal tools to prosecute, remove, or otherwise hold to account the perpetrators of unlawful anti-Semitic harassment and violence. So the Trump administration is reporting that there are lots of anti-Semitic sentiments on college campuses throughout the United States of America. And for that reason, he has to protect Jewish students from the onslaughts and the aggressive attitudes and sentiments of pro-Palestinian protesters, right? That is something that is very interesting. Now, we also have this coming from the Times of Israel, right? There's an article that was written in the Times of Israel. Trump's AG, right? That's the Attorney General nominee, has called for FBI to question pro-Hamas campus protesters, right? And this was written on November 22, 2024. Pam Bondi also said those backing Palestinian terror group need to be taken out of our country, a step which GOP platform advocates for non-citizens. But let us listen to what Pam Bondi is saying in addition to college students. I'm going to share the screen with you just for you to see what she is here saying, what is in her mind. Now, remember now that this statement was said on November 24th, after Trump won the election last year when he was still president-elect. Now, listen to Pam Bondi's statement regarding the pro-Palestinian protesters. The thing that really was troubling to me, these students in universities in our country, whether they are here as Americans or if they're here on student visas, and they're out there saying, I support Hamas, she said in the October 23, 2023 interview, frankly, they need to be taken out of our country. Or the FBI needs to be interviewing them right away when they're saying, I support Hamas. I am Hamas. That's not saying I support all these poor Palestinians who are trapped in Gaza. All right, so this is what she's suggesting. So even if you are an American and you support it, or you are about to support or will support pro-Palestinian efforts, it means that you are going to be deemed as a sympathizer, a Hamas sympathizer. This is where we're moving to. This is the dangerous ground on which we are treading in the United States of America. But let me just be here with you, because last year I published a video in which I told you that Doug Emhoff, right, that is Kamala's husband, he was the unofficial anti-Semite czar in the Joe Biden's administration. And his words were practically the same thing that Pam Bondi and Trump are expressing, the same words, the same attitude towards anti-Jewish sentiments. So had Kamala won the election, I am not sure that it would have been much different what Trump is doing. And that is to show you that policy-wise, the two parties are the same. And you have to understand that. So they're dividing you now by saying it's Trump, 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 Trump. And they keep on saying everything is Trump, not acknowledging that Trump has advisors. And Trump doesn't care one bit, right? He's just exercising the power. He loves power, and he's just exercising the power that has been given to him by his superiors, by those who run and control the military-industrial complex, what we call the national security state. That is what you have to understand. But the fact that universities will now become surveillance apparatuses is something that should boggle the mind, something that you should be concerned about, that universities should be places where students are allowed to express dissenting opinions. But now it's becoming a controlled center of the state. How is this different from what happens in China? How is this different? I don't know. Now, is this the same US that people say is a full democracy in which we have freedom of expression and freedom of speech? Or are we morphing into a new country? Are we embracing a new ideology? I leave you to answer that question. But I'd like you just to look at this statement that was pronounced by a lady years ago, a writer, the most translated female author in the history of the English language. And she says here, national ruin follows national apostasy. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Isaiah 24, verse 5. The people of the United States have been a favored people, but when they restrict religious liberty, surrender Protestantism, and give countenance to popery, the measure of their guilt will be full, and national apostasy will be registered in the books of heaven. The result of this apostasy will be national ruin. Now, if you understand the context in which this was written, you'd understand that in Europe, during the days of during the Dark Ages, that you were not allowed to express yourselves freely. Other than what the church, the Catholic Church said, you could not dissent. You could not disagree with anything that they say. You had to follow the diktats of the Roman Catholic papacy. Now, when the United States was founded, after it was founded, the United States wanted to be the antithesis of what Catholic Europe was, because it was now founded on Protestant principles. And for that reason, it encouraged freedom of expression, even when some of the sentiments expressed might not be what others might agree with, might what they would assent to. However, in recent times, we see where the nation, that's the United States, is moving towards the unification of an ideology, that everybody has to be a part of that ideology. Everybody has to believe in that ideology. Everybody must embrace that ideology or face the consequences, right? That the force, the arm of the state will be used to coerce any citizen to follow the diktats of the United States. Now, what we have are two different ideologies. We have that of the Republican Party and the Democrats. Well, at least in style. But when we look behind the scenes, when we look behind the veil, when we see what is happening, we understand that both parties are leading in the same or moving in the same direction. As I told you, that Doug Emhoff, right? Doug Emhoff, that is Kamala's husband, that he was going to be the anti-Semite czar, in terms of he would also be restricting speech as far as speaking out against Jews would be concerned. And I repeat here that I do not endorse any form of violence against Jews. Jews are ordinary people like anyone else in the world, and they deserve for their rights to be defended, just like the African, just like the Spanish, just like the Dutch, just like any other person on planet Earth. However, if any of us is involved in exploiting the rights of another human being, we ought to be called out. And that is my perspective. What is yours? What is your perspective as you contemplate on this issue that foreign students can see their visas, their student visas revoked, canceled, and they could face deportation orders back to their country of origin? So I appeal to foreign students to make sure that you are aware of these rules. And perhaps you might not be able to write any intellectual papers on Palestine and Israel. So for those of you who are writing your thesis and your dissertations, I'm not sure how that is going to be dealt with, because obviously, if you can't protest, if you can't say anything, even in classroom, if you can't have an open and transparent discussion, an unbiased discussion, a critical discussion, then it means, therefore, that I don't know what's the purpose of attending a university. And when will this restriction on speech as regards the Jews be expanded to other areas of our lives? We saw during the pandemic what happened. I don't have to repeat that. And they're expanding every day. We're seeing that infrastructure is being expanded upon. We need now to delve further into how the United States is pushing toward becoming a dragon. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Remember not to like the videos so the videos can be shared with as many people on the platform. All the best to you. See you then. Ciao.